things that we can't really control, but what can we actually control? And I think some of your comments to me about how your organisation has embraced change and how you look towards partnerships and how you look towards the future of doing something. As Tricia said this morning too, change takes effort, we know that. I'd just like to invite you to have some closing comments.
Sure, thank you. And I think to pick up on Tricia's point, the notion of user-centered design is also an area that Insight's heavily involved in, and I think that's part of our future and part of where the early childhood development of the CI world is going. What Savannah's referring to is that I spoke earlier today about community tables and organizations sitting around the table, and we've been doing that for 20-something years in BC, and we've yet actually to come up with any real solutions or any real change or any way to make a difference. And so at Insight, we're starting to ask ourselves, what are the, where do we need to be and who do we need to be with? And maybe we need to be looking at very non-traditional partners. We need to be looking in other places. We need to be checking under the rocks and et cetera. So community centers, but not just community centers, but a variety of other types of organizations that perhaps don't have a lot of truck in the disability sector. Perhaps that's not something that they're overly familiar with. But we think that there's some cross-pollination and some different ideas that we can get from them. So we're really starting to have a look at with whom we partner. And just because you're a service provider, and particularly if you're a service provider in the disability sector, yes, you may not be interested in them anymore. Which is kind of a harsh message. I absolutely understand that. But you know what? We've been sitting around with other organizations that do the same work as us for many, many years and not getting anywhere, so it's time to think differently. Which is why I'm here today. And you can look, well, Plumtree is similar. Yes, it is. But the work that you're doing and you have done is inspiring to us at Kinsight, and the work that Tricia's been doing at the Mackenzie Center as well. So I think that's where it is. We need to be more intentional around our partnerships, and we need to be more intentional around the kinds of changes that we want to make. So and that's our future, and it's driven by families, because honestly, I have no idea what families are going to want in 10 years. But I can tell you families with little kids right now have a pretty good idea about what they want to have happen for their 14-year-old or 15-year-old in 10 years. For their 3-year-old in 10 years or 15 years.
That's true. So where to in a future decade? I sort of see what we've got is more consistency with inclusion and supports, best practice models such as key worker and transdisciplinary. A couple of our panel members have spoken about family leadership, involvement in the design of new, families designing and leading solutions. Tricia, you've said that could have a knock-on effect in terms of what ends up being developed, that families, as you said, Gareth, will, their children are little now. If we support them, they'll be the creators of the new organisations and services of the future. And we've got to be brave enough to allow that to happen and to support that to happen right now, rather than protecting vested interests, but kind of really opening that up and being curious and open about how we invite change and conversations around change. It's not always easy. But from India, we heard about implementation in real life. I think that's just so important. What we create in 10 years' time is going to, be the result of what we actually start doing right now. And some of these things are in place already, but how do we harness some energy around those? The user-centered design, again, that kind of leads back to family leadership. And your partnerships kind of piece, which I sort of think is a really strategic and profound message that I'm going to take away from this couple of days, which is, who are our partners? Which organisations have we been talking to in the past? Has that been the best in terms of impact? Who else could we be talking to? Where do we find those unusual sort of partners who just might offer some inspiration and another perspective that will just help us look into sort of our own organisations and our own practices and help us step into the future. So thank you, Gareth, Heng, Tricia, Leanne and Anu. Thanks to our international guests from India, New Zealand, Singapore and our Australian guests too. We've got some Australian guests. You're welcome to stay for 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. We're having an informal discussion. It's kind of Q&A. It's very informal. But at 4, many of us do want to head straight to the ISEI conference. So I realise you brought some goodies. And we're going to the reception, and I just want to say that tonight is the opening reception, and peer worker Stacey Tuma has been invited to give an address at the opening reception, and she's prepared a speech, and it is amazing. I'm going to share the written speech with you. It is incredible, and you know, it's everything that you imagine that she would say, and lots of wonderful things about the things that she's learnt here at Plumtree from many of the people that she's worked with, and lots of things about the value of networking and meeting with other parents and feeling empowered as a family member, and coming to the understanding of what best practice means and the power of her and her family and her community to help her children, including her child who has a disability, grow and develop. So, Leanne, you wanted to share something?
Really super quick, I've got a bunch of materials. The National Association for the Education of Young Children in the U.S., they heard I was coming here, and they gave me a bunch of materials. They're really into global outreach. I mean, it's a U.S. association, but they really want to branch out into the whole world to learn, because we can all learn from one another. So I'll bring it out to the foyer, and I'll hand it out to people.
Thank you very much. Would you join me in? Oh my God.
If anyone is interested, they have an online forum where you can post questions, or if you are seeking information, it's very helpful. You can post your questions. People from all over the world will see it and respond with you.
That's NACI.
That's
Yes.
NACI.
Okay, we'll circulate that link as well. Would you join me in thanking our panelists?